Hey guys, this little chat is going to be more geared towards the ladies, but hey, there might be men who want to understand a little bit better how prolonged fasting affects the female hormonal cycle. It has come to my personal attention since I started practicing prolonged fasting months ago. I've largely just been fasting like a man, and I have done some damage to my body, unfortunately. Men's bodies work on a super simple 24-hour cycle without a whole lot of hormones to balance. They are biologically and ancestrally built to hunt and provide for family-based communities. And this means they're going to be physically exerting themselves, potentially needing to work on limited intake any day, all day. So for men who are going through very natural cycles of feasting and fasting, their hormones are generally not super affected negatively by being in lack of food. They're built to hunt, to feed their families, and then to go continue hunting. So this is very different than females. The female body is built to house and nurture and sustain life, potentially more than one other life if there's, potential of twins or triplets or whatever being held in the womb. Our bodies obviously work on a month-long cycle with raging hormones that ebb and flow and need a little bit more tender loving care. Since I started fasting, I inadvertently damaged my body and my hormonal cycle, and now for the past couple of months I have been working really hard to rebalance and heal those consequences, and I am finally seeing success in that, and I'm super excited about it. So I'm hoping this can either prevent other women from damaging their bodies or potentially help someone else who might be going through the same thing as me. So this is not saying that fasting is bad for women. All the things we hear about fasting and autophagy are still very true and very applicable to women, although I do think most of the videos and most of the information that we are seeing is largely going to be more specific to men on a broad stroke. It's still very applicable to women, just not quite as broad strokey as it is for men. Fasting obviously still has an amazing power to heal and support your hormones, all your body systems. As a female, you just really need to pay attention to where you're at in your cycle and work with your body and support those hormones that are currently flowing through your body at any given moment, because it's going to change pretty much day to day, and just try not to work against that, which is unfortunately what I was doing for a little while. So for me, my improper fasting, I guess, had two very tangible consequences. One was just very stubborn weight gain, which I guess is kind of what we all dread, especially with fasting. I know a lot of people have a concern about if I start fasting and then my body's just going to hold on to weight and it's going to screw up your metabolism, etc., etc. Which for a while I believe was true, and then I was like, no, this is pish posh, whatever. That's not true. Well, there is truth to that. So you just got to be really careful about when you fast. So the first really frustrating side effect for me was very stubborn weight gain. The other was extremely irregular and totally unpredictable cycles, which is very foreign to me. Weight gain wise, even during prolonged fasts, I could not for the life of me lose poundage. My body was just holding on to fat and water like it was preparing for the worst famine in history and was going to have to sustain multiple babies through it, and just needed to hold on to everything it could. And as soon as I stopped fasting like a man, if you will, and I started fasting within my cycle and within a healthy window in my cycle, I literally dropped 12 pounds in the first 3 days. When just a couple weeks prior, I had fasted 3 days and hardly dropped one single pound. So it makes a huge difference to healthily fast within your cycle. I assume that was because my body was just dramatically preparing for survival and was stuck in this survival mode because I was fasting during a bad period in my cycle. So that was a very frustrating side effect. Hormone and cycle wise, I have always had a clockwork cycle. Pretty much since I started my cycle when I was a young girl, except for when I was on birth control for a certain period of time, and that was terrible and I would never recommend it to anyone. But other than that, I've always had a super dependable clockwork cycle until I started prolonged fasting. And when I would do really long fasts, I would skip a cycle, which made a ton of sense to me because I was not providing my body with the nutrients that it would need to sustain another life. So it automatically, of course, would say, oh, okay, well, we're in a time of famine. You can't get pregnant right now because you don't have the nutrients to sustain a baby. So we're just not going to allow that process to progress. That made a ton of sense to me. And then in those first couple fasts, I would generally just get right back on track, as if I would just skip one cycle and then continue on. But after months and months of experimenting with prolonged fasting in bad periods of time, at this point, well, this cycle I can, but as of a few weeks ago, I wouldn't be able to tell you what my average cycle length was because it was so irregular. And that was just such a foreign state for me to be in because I was so used to having those super regular cycles. I could basically work on my cycle better than I could an actual calendar because it's just super dependable. Anyway, so those were like kind of my two main really tangible bad side effects of prolonged fasting as a female. The good thing is that everything is healable. Everything is redeemable. All of this has really just necessitated me the opportunity to learn about how different prolonged fasting affects women's bodies and biology, and how I can use that to heal and support my own body in the long term. And I'm super excited about sharing that. So I'm going to try to offer just a super simple breakdown of the best way or time to fast in your cycle, and maybe some tips to go along that if I can stay on track. I'm going to focus on 2 periods of time within your cycle: the very last week before your cycle starts, and then the very first week of your cycle. There's a lot that goes on during your cycle, but these 2 time periods seem to be the most important and the simplest to know about, to have knowledge about. So just dive in. What I've learned, and what this has rung very true for me in these past couple of cycles where I've been focusing more on healing: day 1 through 10. So as soon as you start your period, this time is the best and the easiest to fast. Your hormones have dipped quite a lot, and there's not as many like temperamental high levels of hormones that you need to treat with some tender loving care. This is the time that fasting and being in kind of that perpetual state of autophagy is really actually going to be purely beneficial, and there's not going to be like detrimental side effects to your hormones. Not only that, but fasting during this time is just going to be super easy. I mean, in comparison, super easy. Everything is relative. Everybody's a little bit different, but it's going to be way easier. Your cravings are going to be significantly lower and like easier to fight through or get through. Excuse me. Because you don't have hormones or bodily systems and functions that are producing the hormones to demand a certain nutrients or certain caloric intakes. So this time is really just a time that your body is super primed for a clean out session. I mean, it's already going through its own clean out session with your period. And so kind of just piggybacking off of that energy will allow your whole body to cleanse and clean out everything it needs to. And it's just perfect timing. I mean, really, honestly, if I was just going to give one simple tip to women who wanted to regularly practice prolonged fasting, it would be just that. If you're a beginner and just want to keep it super simple, just fast when you start your period. Within that first week of starting your period, however long you want to shoot for, 2 days, just get a couple of easy days under your belt. If you want to go a little bit longer, do a full 10 days. Super exciting. I kind of hover around 5 to 7 days because my body loves it. I feel super amazing, especially by day 6 and 7. Past 7 days, I don't see a whole lot of benefit for my own body. Super prolonged fast, I'll save for another time. But right now, at the beginning of my cycle, 5 to 7 days is so ideal. But everybody's different. Listen to your body, of course. And FYI, this is really just for prolonged fasting. Intermittent fasting is a lot more complicated to juggle. There's a lot more things going on. I'm going to super talk about that today, although I would love to make another video that's more detailed later on. If you are interested in learning more about like the ins and outs of intermittent fasting within the female cycle, Dr. Mindy Pelz is an incredible resource for women who want to learn about that and be knowledgeable on that. So I'll link her channel below. Right, the other week of the cycle. So I'm going to skip those the 2 middle weeks of your cycle. This leads me to that very last week of your cycle. So this is going to be like post 20 days. or post day 20. If you're on day 20 and later. This is typically when most women are going to experience premenstrual syndrome, beloved PMS, cramping, mood swings, bloating, cravings, all that jazz. So when that starts to happen, this is the time where hormones are raging, they're at their highest, and they really need support. So very simply, during this time, don't fast. Just don't do it. Listen to your body, eat what you need to, eat when you need to. Don't even intermittent fast. If you wake up hungry, feed your body. It needs support during this time. Specifically, progesterone is very high during this time, and progesterone is apparently a super finicky hormone and needs a little bit more support. I'm personally 99% carnivore. Like, I'd call myself a hyper-carnivore or ketovore or whatever people call it on the internet these days, but I am 99% carnivore. But during this last week of my cycle, I usually will add in a lot of squash. For whatever reason, my body really wants squash, and especially during these last couple cycles where I've been focusing more on healing my hormones and my cycle, I've noticed, oh my gosh, it's the just squash and salt. I don't season it. I don't put anything else in it, just squash and salt, cooked really well. But it is like the most heavenly tasting thing my body could ever ask for. During other periods of my cycle, I could take it or leave it. But during this week of my cycle, oh my gosh, it's like, my mouth is watering now. Just salted squash is heavenly. So I add that last week of my cycle, I add squash in. Anyway, just listen to your body, feed it when it needs to be fed during the last week of your cycle. Your hormones will be very happy. When you start your period again, start fasting again. Everything's good. Everything works like clockwork. It's great. And since I've been doing this, this is where I've seen the most benefit within my own body, and the weight that I have lost in those first couple of days that I'm able to fast at the first week of my cycle does not come back. I'm able to actually keep it off, which has been my problem in the past few months since I did a really long prolonged fast and just totally screwed up my hormonal cycle. So that's where I've seen the most benefit. I'm going to end informationally there. I want to keep it simple but informative still. So I guess easy recap. As soon as you start your period, fast away, go crazy, sit on autophagy for a few days and let your body just reset and heal. And then as soon as you start experiencing PMS, just don't fast at all. And add some yams or squash or other progesterone supportive foods. Support your body through just resting and listening intuitively and giving it what it needs. And then start the cycle over again and over again and over again the next month. If you have any lingering or leftover questions, please let me know. If I can't answer them already, I love the opportunity to do some more research and learn about all this stuff more like in depth and answer your questions that way. Benefits all of us. Thank you for being present, and I will talk to you next time.